7:13, and I'll call to order the December 8th, 2021 meeting of the Weare Conservation Commission. I'm Andy Fulton, the chair of the commission. We have Steve Nager, the vice chair to my left. Beyond him, hiding over there, we've got Ray LeMay and Mike Camacho. And to my right, we have Sherry Burdick and Mark Phillips. Bill is not able to join us tonight. So that gives us 6 of 7 members. We have a quorum. We have some business to do, but right up front, as usual, when we have a guest, and we have one guest tonight, I'd recommend to the commission that we hear the guest's concerns right off the bat, so we don't need to keep anybody waiting. Is that all right with the commissioners?
Yes.
Yep. Very good. Luke, come on up, introduce yourself, and let's see what we can do.
Good evening. I'm going to chase the microphone. My name is Luke Drake. I live at 141 Duck Pond Road. Up the street. So I suspect that the bulky stuff that you were looking at just a few minutes ago was the minutes from the meeting, the selectmen's meeting on Monday. So.
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, okay. I
It's
apologize.
just conservation minutes. Yeah, we don't
I
know.
apologize, because that was a lengthy one, and I was going to say, if you've already seen that, then we wouldn't need to cover some of this stuff. First off, I want to thank you all for your volunteerism. I've volunteered a lot in my life. I'm a public servant for almost 40 years. Been on all kinds of commissions, including in this town. I am the school board moderator for both the Center Woods and for the high school. And I was at one time with the agricultural chair, or commission chair, excuse me. So I understand the difficulties of navigating the issues in town. I also understand some of the complications of living in a small town and the crossovers that invariably happen. However, that's, some of those crossovers are kind of what brings me tonight. So, as you may have learned from the Board of Selectmen or Town Administrator, I have serious concerns about property rights, my property rights, and the manner in which town representatives, including yourselves, have dealt with these rights over the last several months. In investigating the issue, I reviewed the minutes from this commission and much of the video available over the past several years. This review's raised numerous concerns for me, not only about my own land, but the contradictory manner in which the commission and other representatives appear to have treated similar cases. Additionally, I found multiple apparent improprieties in both rules of proceeding and the repeated failures by members of this board to identify known conflicts of interest and failures to recuse themselves when both discussions and votes on these matters of clear conflict came before the commission. In response to the email I received from the vice chair regarding derogatory comments, I am presenting publicly available information from your own minutes and your meeting's video. Your decision to conduct discipline regarding personnel do not infringe on my rights to publicly address property right concerns. Any such discussion would, I think, only take place after due process and would in all likelihood not involve me in any case. First, let me say I'm not here to address the withdrawal of my permission from a third party for the use of my land, and I strongly object to the Commission's continual reference throughout this process to the exercise of my personal discretion in the use of that land. The issue before the board had, it was thought, no bearing on my property, and I was not invited or involved in the presentation, yet on numerous occasions the board has referenced me by name in association with the exercise of my rights with a third party entity in what could be described as a disparaging light. The identification of me by name was wholly unnecessary to the business brought before the town. And while I do not hold the town accountable for the third party disclosing our business, I do hold the town accountable for the numerous subsequent repetitions of my name as the person who, to paraphrase, caused the loss of a third of the 501c3 party's trail system. So right now I'd like to ask, although I think I know the answer to this, how many members of the commission here tonight are also members of the Weare Winter Wanderers. How many are officers? Right.
Am I an officer or am I
No, our director.
a director? Okay.
Okay. I would now like to share some publicly available information that supports the notion that members of this commission, as well as staff, failed to comply with title, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the, or do the Roman numeral, but Chapter 673, Local Land Use Boards, by failing to disclose outside interests, failing to recuse themselves from the discussion, and failing finally to recuse themselves from related votes by this commission. The relevant statute clearly states that no member of such a board shall participate in deciding or shall sit upon the hearing of any question which the board is to decide in a judicial capacity if that member has a direct personal or pecuniary interest in the outcome which differs from the interest of other citizens, or that member would be disqualified for any cause to act as a juror upon the trial of the same matter in an action of law. It's hard to talk this fast with these masks on.
Take the mask
Chair,
off.
can
Go ahead.
so Luke, I mean, you're going,
I'd really prefer to finish my statement and take questions at the end.
yeah, that's what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be hard to remember all that,
Right.
just for me. I
So,
mean,
so I'd
I got a copy of that in front of me or something, just to make a note. I just, it's going to be tough to follow.
I only have the one copy of this, though I got some others, so I can certainly wait for you to take notes if you need to, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so, all right, yeah. It's just, we're going through kind of a lot of material.
Let me know when you're ready to proceed.
Yeah, just, what was that you referenced, so that's a state statute?
It is, it's a state RSA, title LXIC. Anyone want to know, to pop that one off the top of their head, Roman numeral? Chapter 673.
What's the RSA, though?
I think it's, I'm not sure if that's under 91, but it's, I can certainly provide that information in my follow-up writing.
That's, okay,
All right, ready?
yeah.
All right, in my case, the question involves a petition by the Weare Winter Wanderers to the board, to the commission to approve travel establishment of trails and seasonal travel by snowmobiles. To my knowledge, this petition first came before this body on 5/12/21, and I have a note that says, irrelevant side note, happens to be my birthday. Turns out to be the gift that kept on giving. I'll read a few excerpts from this meeting. At the 5/12 meeting from WWW shared that the club no longer has access to Luke Drake's property previously used for 15 years. That's not correct. It was used for 25 while I owned it. Without this landowner's property, 1/3 of the trail system is lost. He's here to ask the commission permission to reroute the trail through the right-of-way on the west side of the Duck Pond development, and it calls out the maps. Vice Chairman asked the chair to share the map so that all board members and viewing audience could follow along with the discussion. Once the plan was shared, Chairman Fulton explained the Weare Winter Wanderers are requesting permission to use an existing roadbed on these properties. The club's trail already crosses through some of this land, and they're looking to extend access. I'll note here there is no roadbed. There is a path that comes across the field, and there is a path that, as I discussed before, and I have to make a correction to something I said in my original discussion with the Board of Selectmen. I mentioned that my deed talks about this particular path. And it allows for the passage of 2 oxen abreast by a man named, I said at the time, Nathan Breed. It's not, it's Enoch Breed. Enoch Breed. So there is no existing roadbed that we're talking about. The trail master asked whom they should follow up to get this set in motion. The vice chair replied to Conservation Commission, the Board of Selectmen would provide a permanent solution. And then there was some conversation about the motorized vehicles, why is an easement needed, etc. And the vice chair explained the subdivision book page and reference 2 easements that do allow motorized vehicles. Earlier, it may have benefited the Forest Society. This allowance is permanent. What the club is asking to do is put another easement on top of this existing easement. All right, so a couple of things to clarify here. That easement was apparently, in discussion with the Forest Society, signed off by the previous owner of the lands, Mark Hess. Now, unfortunately, it's not documented in the deeds. So that's a whole separate matter. But also to note, there have been several times throughout the course of this conversation where the Commission and later the Board of Selectmen referred to this right-of-way for logging access. That is not accurate. The actual right-of-way was for the passage of light vehicles, less than, and the maximum width of that right-of-way was 6 feet. So there were a lot of glitches at the very beginning. And I'll say again up front, as I said before, the selectmen, I understand the Snowmobile Club, this isn't their business to know the meets and bounds and all these sorts of things. When they come to the town and ask for a waiver, my beef is not with them at this point. Frankly, my beef is with you all and with the selectmen, because you're the ones that adjudicate that. And you're the ones that have the responsibility of due diligence. And frankly, in reviewing the videos for the past several years, you guys are good at your due diligence. I've seen you in action when you're talking about the meets and bounds of properties you're looking to acquire. However, with the information provided to you by this applicant, it was incomplete in the beginning. It was eventually modified by providing a map that was provided from the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forest, which on that map clearly shows their boundaries and clearly shows the connection of my 2 pieces of land in the way between the town property and the society's property. All right, so I've already covered that note. Let's see. So what the club is asking to do is put another easement on top of an existing easement. This needs to be granted as license, permission, or agreement. Once in place, a snowmobile club would never have uncertainty in accessing the land. Town Administrator Bolton asked, should attorney for the town be sent the book and page to review? The vice chair responded appropriately, yes. The rights and the easement need declaration, with the goal being the club has permanent use of property. Long-term agreement shows the board, the selectmen, conservation commission are in support of this trail relocation. Though legally complex, establishing a permanent easement with current benefactors would be advantageous to the club. There's some conversation then about, why can't we just, why couldn't the town as the current legal owners just issue an easement? And there was some response to that that's for the town council to decide. I believe it was vice chair who responded to that. Ray LeMay then asked about establishing a legal easement, added that establishing a legal easement would ensure the abutters on the new subdivision would never have recourse in the future. This is a troubling statement for me, given that the member in question is listed as an officer of the 501, which establishes in itself a clear conflict of interest. In addition, the apparent intention, from my view, of the Commission to assist the 501c to limit future landowners in their prospects for appeals of the actions. So Ralph goes on to question the Commission as governors of the land regarding the need for an easement. Chairman Fulton says, having legal easement with a firm purpose would negate the potential for future conflict. Prior legal easements would be used or could be used to invalidate future agreements many years later. Town council will dispel any restrictions. Now, both the Commission and the WW, and I will acknowledge here, I'm not clear on what this Commission was provided for a map in the initial conversations. Okay, that's the map that I have right there. And what I don't know if you all have access to that right now. I have a couple of copies. What I want to do, so here is the map. I'll get it to you. And here's a blown up section of the corners in question. I'll call your attention to the lower left hand of the Spinif map. Now you'll notice on that map there's yellow lines and there's green lines. And the yellow lines are clearly identified as from the tax map. The green lines are identified by Spinif as their boundaries. And if you look at the blow up, you will note that their boundaries are coincidental with 2 of my boundaries, which come to a common point on that trail.
I gotta stop you. This is too confusing. I mean, you gotta be pointing so we can follow along?
Oh, sure.
I mean, this is just, you're just rattling a lot off, and you know, I mean, frankly, like tax maps are meaningless.
This is not a tax map, first off. This
It's
is
a
boundary map.
GIS, yeah,
This one here is the
Hold
boundary
on,
map
hold on a
from
second,
the
please.
survey.
Please return to the podium. Mr. Vice Chair, I'm going to hold you up for a second. I'd like Mr. Drake to finish off his,
they can't follow
Presentation.
along. We need to see where he's at on the map, Andy.
I know, we'll have a chance for questions afterwards.
But can we at least point to the map, to where we're at? How can you follow this when we're talking about points on a map?
My properties are highlighted as Drake and Drake on the property in red. I added those so that you could be clear on which properties I'm talking
You
about.
see what I'm talking about? We got the wrong map over here as part of the problem.
There are two that were presented. Mr. Drake, if you could
Here and
speak specifically to any points on these maps when you're making the discussion, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'm not sure how to call out those points
Let's
by reference.
rewind just a couple sentences and see whether we can follow along with where you're talking about.
Okay, you see the Society Protection of New Hampshire Forest property.
Which map, first off, are you on?
Well, the big one that comes from the Society of New Hampshire,
Okay, yeah,
Forest.
yeah.
you see their property?
Yeah, the green, yep.
Right. Well, that green boundary is identified in their key as the boundary. The yellow lines are unfortunately what the trail master was using to look at access. And so the yellow lines, which are from the notoriously inaccurate tax maps, would indicate that there's a gap between my properties, my two properties on that point. And what I blew up in the smaller section shows my two properties, and you'll see that tiny little angled piece that comes down and actually touches at a common point on the property. That property from Spiniff that I'm talking about, when Betty Simon's piece was transferred over to Spiniff, they surveyed that.
That angle there.
Meet. This property and this property meet here.
I'm still not sure here.
Got it.
We got Drake here, we got Drake here. And I believe,
So is everything that's outlined in green yours?
Well, no. What's outlined in green is the boundaries of the Society for Protection of New Hampshire Forests land. Now, the Society for Protection of New Hampshire Forest land abuts both of my parcels where they come together at a common point.
so,
This,
so Mr. Drake,
Yes,
is
sir.
your contention that there's no way a trail can cross there without being on your property?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for clarifying that contention. And if you have, I mean, that's the crux of the matter here. If you have some more that you'd like to discuss, please try to expedite and fill us in.
Okay, so by way of showing folks what we're talking about here, I've got a couple of pictures, if I may. First off, this picture is a picture of a monument on the common point. There's a four-corner monument on that common point. This picture shows approaching from the town property to my posted property, and then beyond this tree is the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forest property. Now, the reason I bring this up is because my understanding is that a member of this commission walked out there with a member of the Weare Winter Wanderers. It is also my understanding that the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forest representative identified to the trail master that those signs gave her pause for concern, that it appeared that there was at least a misunderstanding of the markings. I note that in all the conversations with this commission, it was never mentioned that these lines were posted.
I'll take what you've said at face value, but my concern here is for, are you claiming that this commission inappropriately
So this is his property.
I am claiming that
Allowed-
this commission
hold on a
inappropriately
second.
acted.
Allowed
Excuse me, there is a
the
message for you.
Conservation Commission, or allowed the Weare Winter Wanderers access to town property.
No, I'm not alleging that they inappropriately allowed them to access town property. I am saying that this commission authorized them access to my property, including the removal of trees that are on my property.
Can I address that?
Hold on just a second. All right, and we've got, obviously, lots of questions. How much more do you have to present?
All right,
on
well, what I
your-
can do is,
your
to
case?
to expedite this conversation, I'll boil it down and I'll send in writing the multiple points that I have, and I'll provide that in writing so you can all respond point by point
Well-
on those issues. Excuse me.
Can I be
There-
recognized
there-
for a second here?
Hold on, please hold up. There are points and then there are requests. What are
Of
you
course.
requesting of this commission?
I'm requesting that you invalidate a vote that you took that was specifically inappropriate because you had conflicted members on the board who did not identify their conflict of interest, did not recuse themselves from the discussion, and then followed through and voted against the statutes.
Okay. Any other requests beyond that of this commission now?
The other request would be for the commission to please consider paying due diligence and more attention to these matters before you act on them in a vote. Now, there are points where you were very careful, and then there are points where you weren't at all.
Okay. You've got to the crux of the matter. That's important. I want to give you a full voice. Any other important items that we consider before I open this up to discussions?
Well, as I said, the crux is the conflict of interest statutes, and that this board appears to have consistently not recused themselves appropriately.
We can absolutely talk about that. But you've made a contention, established a case that something was done to your property. And that this body gave somebody permission to do something that we didn't have the right to do. Is that true?
Yes, sir. And specifically, that was the removal of one 8-inch softwood and up to half a dozen 3-inch softwoods. Sir, I'd appreciate the shaking of the head is kind of distracting. But
You know,
of those pieces,
Hold on.
the commission authorized the removal of those trees by the snowmobile club.
On,
I thought,
you're saying on your property,
Right here to the right of the
There was a
witness tree, which is where my second piece of property, that little extension that they overlooked,
all right,
is.
got it. There's some contention, some important points. Okay with the presentation as it stands now?
You mean incomplete?
As far as, are there other important pieces that we need to be aware of before I open this up for discussion?
Give me one moment. All right, so I've covered their failure to recuse from deliberations. The one thing is repeated misstatements and misrepresentations regarding the monumentation of the corner in question. And that was another lack of due diligence. Members of this commission during the public meetings stated that the
I-
property was not monumented.
Understand if you have points like that, you want to become part of the record, writing it down for us would be very helpful.
I will send you the entire write-up.
We good? Now, Vice Chair Major, please proceed with questions for Mr. Drake.
I don't have any
Concerns or
questions.
comments amongst the commissioners?
No, I have comments.
Okay.
You know, my professional background is land management. I understand surveying, I understand monumentation. I brought all of these up. What's the guy's name, the trail master that we
Ralph.
talked to? Ralph.
Yeah.
So I repeatedly said to him, so I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a mischaracterization, because there were some real clear statements to him by me that are videoed, that the Weare Conservation Commission and the town of Weare can't give permission to do anything that's not on Weare property. And we were talking about there's some kind of a little road that goes through to Duck Pond Road, and I said, no, absolutely not. We do not have the right to give this to you. So we never actually, the discussion here was to get the permission for the selectmen to sign off on. So there wasn't, we're an advisory committee, we're a land management committee. I brought these very similar points up about making sure that we're on our property, talked about involving a surveyor. So you kind of mischaracterized what this commission did. There was a heck of a lot of due diligence, Luke. Now I do want to caution you too on the conflict of interest statute. It's essentially, a member has to decide on when there's a conflict or not. And like the Winter Wanderers is not like a for-profit thing. Like if I came in here looking to profit from something, or I was going to benefit monetarily, but boy, that's kind of a stretch. And, you know, lawyers can provide an opinion, but I don't think these guys were doing anything that was with any sort of malice. And it's, you know, and the other thing I really got to say from my professional background is GIS layers and GIS maps and tax maps are meaningless. So Duck Pond has a registered survey plat, and that's all that I would ever count on, the deed and the plat for the boundary. So I made that point. If you go back and watch the videos, you know, about the monumentation, that's really important to me because of this kind of thing that you're talking about, all right? So there was never any permission to cut anything on anybody's property at all, and I want to make that clear for the record. Absolutely no permission to cut anything on anybody else's land, not to step on anybody's land, not to do anything. We manage town land, and we were trying to do the right thing with an easement and making sure everything was correct and went through the town attorney. So to get kind of badgered over this when we're trying to do our due diligence is infuriating, frankly.
May I respond?
Yeah, I'm done.
So as a citizen, one, I appreciate your work, but two, please understand my professional background, and my professional background is dealing with law and representation in cases time and time again for the last, as I said, well, probably 30 years anyway with the government. So I understand what it means to research the laws. Now, when we're talking about the permission that was granted, specifically what was granted by this commission was permission to cut down some trees. Now, I do not believe that the commission thought or knew that those trees were on my property when they granted that permission. Nonetheless, they are. And that's the problem here is because of the accelerated nature of the organization's concern, and I get it, you know, they've got winter coming, they're trying to get their trail in and all this, so they're trying to move things along. Through the course of looking at all of these, I can see that they tried to expedite this matter, and then they ran into some trouble with getting a surveyor, which would have cleared this all up. Had the survey happened, then hopefully this would have all been resolved and never been acted on. But it was acted on, and the only way that I found out about it and intervened, and the only reason the trees didn't get cut, is because when Ralph reached out to me to move the gate, I said, well, sure, but that's interesting. How are you going to get there from here without crossing my land? And he said, your land is landlocked. I said, that's not so. I walked that land with Robert Todd when he surveyed it. I know where those markers are. I can show you.
Let me hold you there.
Sure.
I've got an important question.
If I could, though, because I just had one other thing that I just saw that I forgot, and that has to do with the ex parte discussions. My understanding is a member of the...
I'm not sure what
Ex parte means, the rule of commissions like this is you're allowed to have public discussion and discourse in the commission. You're not allowed to have private discussions with members of the commission outside of the commission with an interested party unless so commissioned by the full commission and there's enough people there to monument that, to record the information that was exchanged during that meeting. That didn't happen.
What meeting are you talking about?
My understanding from watching the videos is that Mr. Phillips met with with Frank out on the trail to look at the crossing point.
As a representing some interest?
He was
of the
identified
commission?
by the trail master as being out there as a member of the commission.
He misspoke at that. I was there as vice president of the Snowmobile Club, trying to see what the project is we could organize volunteers for that project.
Sure. Okay. And I can accept that, and you must have seen the posted signs at that point.
Well, that was the question, and it comes down to that we were using the tax map live, same as Onyx, and it didn't show that we were trespassing.
All right, I'd like
I'm
to
not making
establish
any
that
claims of
as
trespassing.
Weare Winter Wanderers business, not Conservation Commission business.
Well, what
Now,
I,
hold,
okay.
let me ask you a question, you
Sure.
made your point. The cutting of tree, if this tree was not cut, is there a point of contention still?
in my mind, there is, well, it didn't happen because I intervened. That's
Right,
all.
so you intervened afterwards, or during, or, you said something was already cut.
No, I did not. I never
So
said that.
nothing's been cut.
Not to my knowledge. What I'm saying is this board acted and gave permission to cut those trees.
Well, I don't know that we did.
No.
I mean, you're saying that,
Okay.
and I've heard a trusted commissioner relate otherwise, and
I'd invite you to review your minutes and your videos, then we can have that discussion later.
well, we don't need to do that. If you want to establish that point, put it in writing, and we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Now, you said you intervened. You also said this work started apparently back in May.
It came before the board in May. To my knowledge, was the first time it came before this commission, excuse me.
Were you aware that it came
No.
before this commission in May?
No, sir. I was made aware of it when Frank contacted me at the end of October to move the gate.
Who's Frank?
I'm sorry, the
Ralph.
trail master.
Ralph?
Ralph, I don't know why I said Frank, Ralph.
Okay. So you're becoming aware of this, was that happenstance? You just happened to be,
I was not aware that they were rerouting through that area at all until that point.
okay. And if they're not rerouting on your property, then,
It's none of my business.
okay. So you've got your business, there's Weare Winter Wanderers business, and there's Conservation Commission business. Now, you've contended that we as a Conservation Commission have granted something that we're not rightfully able to grant, and that we have even our procedures for granting that are suspect,
Flawed, I would say not, I wouldn't use suspect.
flawed. Now, if we say we haven't granted such a right, and we say, thank you for the concern, but we don't view it as flawed, where does that leave us?
Then you
I
have,
mean,
a-
I'm talking specifically towards correction. If there's been some damage to your property that's a result of our action, then there ought to be some sort of correction. I don't hear that there's been damage to your property because of our action, because of the commission's action. I hear you have a very sincere concern for something that was about to happen, and you have a concern with the procedural approach to approving or lining things up that resulted in something untoward happening to your property.
well, the concern was that permission was granted to cut trees off the town's property, that were not on the town's property. The trees that were referenced
Such
by
that
the,
our minutes reflect the Conservation Commission approved cutting
yes,
of
minutes.
vegetation on
No,
somebody
specifically
else's,
the trees.
somebody else's
It did not
property?
mention someone else's property. Again, I believe the Conservation Commission thought it was on their property, thought it was on the town
Town-
property.
town.
That's how it was represented to them by the Snowmobile Club.
Okay.
So, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So I'm a little like confused on what actually happened on this, because I kind of wonder myself, because I thought our position still was that this needed to go through the Board of Selectmen. So that never really got finalized unless the Board of Selectmen approved it. you know, 'cause we had those discussions with Ralph, have to go back and pull up the minutes. I know we talked about surveying in the easement, so that would all get picked up on. No one's ever given any permission to hunt, to cut anything on anybody else's land, so that was, you know, problematic, I think, saying that. So I'd like, do you have which month minutes so we could all kind of?
October 13th,
Okay, pull that up.
Sherry Burdick moved, Mark Phillips seconded to allow the Weare Winter Wanderers to use town property with limited tree removal from signature to May 1st. Now, the discussion that led up to that was specific on where those trees were in reference to the witness tree. That was also specifically described. And that description clearly puts those trees off the town's property. And that granite monument, by the way, that's there is actually almost directly in front of that witness yellow birch tree. So that was right there.
Mr. Drake, it seems like as much as you've stated your concern is with the commission at this point, it seems like the solution is between you and the Weare Winter Wanderers, not between you and the Weare Conservation Commission.
Well, as I
If
said.
there is a solution.
As I said, the business between me, I recognize the business between myself and the snowmobile club is not the business of the town. And I don't come here to discuss that business. And again, my understanding is that when any petitioner comes before the town with a request for an easement, a right-of-way, et cetera, that prior to any actions being granted on that, there would be a look at the metes and bounds of those properties, the deeds, as has been mentioned multiple times. We all understand the tax maps are notoriously erroneous, and yet that appears to be what was referenced throughout the process.
Can we read the minutes?
Please do. Yeah.
This is pertinent, so this is where this whole thing's going awry. All right. This is from the October minutes. So, you know, as you said, they had problems getting the surveyor in, because that's ultimately the smart thing to do. We've got let's see. All right, Vice Chairman Najar stated he would rather the club use rocks or trees to deter other ATVs instead of gates. He also stated the commission could authorize a use agreement for October to May drawn up by the town attorney, a concise statement specified for only town property. Boy, that can't be clearer, can it? Another means, he suggested, is for the club to gain permission from Spiniff as it is their easement. Ralph also discussed cutting small trees on town land, town, not Luke Drake's, town. Vice Chairman Najar asked the commission for a motion for the club to access the town, town land with limited tree removal from October to May. So the intent that we voted on was for the town attorney to write up a use agreement until they could get it surveyed for town land. And so the attorney would have reviewed that. So I'm not sure if that all ever happened, but that's all we authorized.
What I would rebut to that point is, again, if you listen to the audio from the video of the meeting, you'll hear the trail master clearly describe the location of those trees.
Doesn't matter, it says town.
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty lame position, but, okay, I accept that that's your position. If that's the position of the commission, then, you know, my work here is done. But I would request that the commission revoke the permissions it's given to date, given that it is now clear that they were provided erroneous, and I am not suggesting it was in any way a conspiracy or collusion or, what was the other word, any rate of malintent by the organization. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that any time that the town, acting on behalf of property owners' rights and their own rights as the new owner of that piece, before granting permission to use that piece, had a responsibility to clearly identify what that piece was,
Is this
where
a-
it
Well, I
was.
understand what you're saying, but the discussion, the granting of privilege was only extended to town-owned property.
Sure, and I, again, I'm not suggesting that you knew at the time that you were giving them permission to cross onto my land. What I'm suggesting is through using the inappropriate maps.
And just for the record, I'm not saying one way or another, where the property boundaries are. I don't know. You've made a case, and I
I
accept what you're making as a case, but I don't know
Okay, I
one way
will
or the
say,
other
I will
myself on
say
that.
that I brought this first before the selectmen.
And
in
I did
November.
not, I was not aware you brought that before the
Understand,
selectmen
and
either.
there were two meetings related to that, and at the end of the first meeting, I asked, do we have a boundary dispute? I was provided from the town administrator after that, no, we do not. My bounds, as I stated them, there is no dispute on those. So we're not talking actually about a disputed boundary at this point. What we're talking about is, again, a due diligence issue up front before permissions were granted. As I said to the selectmen, the town is fortunate, and I'm fortunate, and the Snowmobile Club is fortunate that this came to my attention now rather than, a month from now when the trail had already been put through and the damages happened. So while I appreciate and respect the position that those trees weren't actually cut, that's a little solace to the next person who ends up in this situation if they don't become on their own aware. And by the way, when I presented this to the representative of the Snowmobile Club, they told me I was wrong based on the tax maps. It was after I contacted Spiniff that they contacted them and said, no, he's right. That line is clearly surveyed on both the NBAC piece and the Spiniff piece, which the town had access to both of those surveys, which is one of the questions I had is, if you've been provided the surveys for both of the adjoining pieces, the outside boundaries, why on earth would you rely on the tax maps for this question?
Can I ask a quick question here? Naomi, you might know this, but this is the confusing part of this. I haven't seen the executed agreement, so I don't know what the heck actually happened. So I'm not sure that you're right that we gave permission to anybody yet, because I haven't seen the agreement. I don't know if anybody signed it. So the gun might have got jumped, and you're barking up the wrong tree, because that all would have gone to the attorney, and nobody from the town actually wrote the agreement as per the motion.
Am I allowed to say something?
Yes, you are.
All right. I've known Ralph for about 4 years. I bought hay from him when I first met him. He came across very brash, very rude. Honestly, I didn't like him. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. So I didn't. So I became part of the Snowmobile Club 3-4 years ago. I hadn't had a snowmobile for about 20 years, but I decided to buy one so I could accompany my son. He bought one, wanted to go riding. I said, I'll go with you. So I bought a sled. And I figured, well, I'm going to join the Snowmobile Club because I want to know where the trails are. And so it goes. The club has a very small group of dedicated members that work tirelessly to cut the brush, maintain the trails. Nobody means anybody any harm. I mean, we have snowmobiles. People have motorcycles, boats, people hunt. This is what we like to do. So Ralph comes along and he joins the Snowmobile Club. And I thought to myself, oh boy. So we needed some volunteers. Nobody wanted to volunteer to be on the board. Naomi will attest to that. Nobody wanted to do anything. So the club was basically on the verge of dissolving. And a few people said, we can't let that happen. There's too many people in the state that rely on these trails. They come from all over the place. They ride through Clough, they ride on Chris Bolton's land, and we need a network in order to get from one place to another. And we appreciate whatever anybody does. So I agreed to be the equipment director, and I've been a reluctant one ever since. I don't have time, but I do what I can. So Ralph came along and he said, I'm retired, I just retired. I'll be the trail administrator. It's a big job. And so then I got to know Ralph. He came to my shop to help us work on equipment, You know, this person comes across as a polar bear. But deep down, he's got a heart of gold. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He will not lie to anyone. He would never try to deceive anyone. He's apologized to the club at least 50 times for what he's done, everything we've just talked about. There was no malice. He wanted to get that trail open. There's a lot of people that relied on it. There's what, 40,000 snowmobilers in the state of New Hampshire, and a lot of them pass through Weare. It's a corridor. So, and we knew for 2 years that you really weren't pleased with having a trail on your land, and we talked about rerouting, and it's hard. And so it came to the last minute. So Ralph says, I'm gonna talk to society, I'm gonna talk to the town. I looked at the tax maps, and I think there's a way around it. Everything you said is true, it's your land, it connects. But everybody will admit, we didn't check the legal deeds. We don't know how. And
We being the snowmobile club?
anybody, well, maybe some people here do, but it didn't get that far. Ralph came in to get initial approval to see if he could actually do it. The commission, as I understand, I was here, said, stay on town land. If you're saying you can stay on town and society land, we don't have any objections to it. Fine. He went on. Nothing happened because everything's at a standstill over there. Nothing actually happened because Ralph was waiting for all of the permits and the approvals to make it happen. It hasn't happened, and nothing's happened. They haven't been out there since. So we basically decided as a club to close that trail. We've closed it on the other side of Route 114. We don't want anybody going down there. We don't want anybody crossing to go to Dimitri's. We want to stay away from your property for your wishes the best we can. We had a discussion in the club, how are we going to stop people that don't know? People that have been using that trail for years and years. We have to do a very good job closing it off. Will some yahoo that's probably not even a club member or even has a registered sled go there? Probably. We have this problem all winter long. You know, how do you stop speeders going up 114? It's not everybody else's. It's not your fault that somebody is speeding on your road. So, as a club, we do the best we can to work with Fish and Game to catch offenders. It helps to have trail cams, and we take plate numbers from the machines if they are registered. And we do the best we can.
Sure.
And I'm sure, I don't know what your hobbies are, but whatever they are, I'm sure you have some sort of camaraderie and you want that sport to succeed, and you'll do whatever you can to help that sport, as we do. Just because we're part of the Snowmobile Club doesn't mean that we're gonna cause harm to the Conservation Commission. I'm in the erosion control business. I got on this board because I saw too many people in town ignoring environmental laws. And so I wanted to make the board aware of these things. When I first offered to become part of the board, I said I can read plans. That's all I've ever done all my life. Site plans, different things. I can look at the wetlands to make sure people are following the rules. And so this business with the snowmobile trail, I don't feel, and like someone said, you know, it's something for a lawyer to decide, but we don't want to go that far. Doesn't have to. Nobody means any malice. Nobody's going to gain financially from this. We're all volunteers. But I don't feel that we did anything, just because we're part of the Snowmobile Club, we didn't harm this whole situation here. We didn't change it.
Okay, so if I may, a couple of things so that you know, you've told part of your story, I'll tell part of mine. I grew up in the town of New Hampton, New Hampshire. My father started one of the first snowmobile clubs in the state, the New Hampton Nighthawks, back in the day. And so, again, I grew up riding trails. I don't have a problem with snowmobiles. I understand. I get it. For my own hobbies, I'm kind of a solo guy. I hunt. Things I do, I don't join social groups very well. That's okay. Again, I don't have a beef with Ralph. Is he gruff? Yes. Did I describe him as aggressive in some of his communications? Yes. Did I chew him out a little bit? Yes, I did. And because I also can be gruff, I also can be cantankerous and obstreperous and pick your word. You know, I get it. I know that about myself. The issues with the trail and the trespassing and et cetera, one of the problems is that everybody I caught out there identified themselves as being out there for the club, and that later became not true. So again, that business is another issue to discuss. Mark and I have had conversations in the past about this. I don't like to think I was uncooperative. I gave the club 2 years' notice.
Yep.
And then last year when I shut it down, because I was really unhappy with some of the local boys who decided they were going to go there anyway. And the club came to me and said, can I have another year? Can we have another year? We don't have time. I said, that's reasonable, yes. Now, there are other factors on where it's passing through my land today, or where it was. This here, I'll acknowledge, I got my back up when I was told by the club that I didn't know my own property boundaries. All right, and that's one thing. That's an issue between me and the club, private organization, separate. What I'm here for tonight, however, is I think there's an ethical consideration for the commission and for members in this town in general, from the Board of Selectmen, from the staff folks, to separate the business of the town from your outside interests. In fact, I think the law calls for that. And it calls specifically for the separation when there's a pecuniary interest, is what it's called, in one of those organizations. That didn't happen. Officers of the organization, however well-intentioned, when issues come before this board regarding the Snowmobile Club, as I understand the law, and I would suggest that you have a conversation with the attorney, is that they should recuse themselves from those discussions. And the law goes on to say recusal is not just to not talk, it's to leave the room and to not vote. And so the reason I come here today is because, again, I've been dealing with law, rules, and regulations for my entire career, and they matter. And in my opinion, when we get casual about the application of them, we get into problems that the town ends up paying for in court. And as you said, I'm not taking the town to court over this. I'm here talking to you directly. You know, if I was going to be that way, first off, I'd have let you do it. I said, oh, okay, that's where you want to go ahead. And I'd have waited for the town to cut those trees. And as I said to the Board of Selectmen, I would have come back at that point and said, well, now you've done it, haven't you? Right? I didn't do that. Now, throughout a lot of this conversation, I've kind of been painted as the bad guy. Not by the club, not by the club.
You have not been
But-
painted the bad guy by the commission either.
Well, I'll say the public perception.
Luke, your email came through, and I'm like, Luke Drake, I think I've heard that somewhere. I couldn't pin it. There is no establishment of a bad guy in this at all.
What I'll say is, going back to the original point, my decision to provide permission continuing for the Snowmobile Club was not a matter for the board.
We didn't.
And yet my
we did-
name is all over the
It's
minutes.
just a reference, a point of reference, not in,
It's
not
not
in
just
maligning,
it's-
not in maligning and not in faulting.
I'm sorry, Sherry Burdick said, that's awful, in response to the town administrator discussion in the meeting about what was happening with the trail and the removal of it.
I'll
There were
contend that with you
characterizations.
to the end of time. We have not taken a position anti-Luke Drake. We've taken a position trying to find a solution.
I'm not suggesting that you have
represented-
intentionally taken a position anymore than I'm suggesting you intentionally tried to cut trees on my property. What I'm trying to do, gentlemen,
That's
is
not
bring
the
your
Conservation
attention.
Commission cutting trees.
I'm trying to bring your attention to this kind of problem. And the problem for me, as a citizen of the town, aside from my property rights, that give me the right to stand up and talk about this, is those of the conflict. That if people are going to have confidence in you in your positions on this commission, they need to be clear that you'll separate your private interests from the public concerns. And time again, when I review the minutes, and I'd invite you as the chair to review the minutes, folks on this commission are speaking as members of the Snowmobile Club during the meeting to each other. Look back at the videos. They refer to we in the possessive plural of the club back and forth the conversation from here that the rest of the public does not have the opportunity. And therein lies the conflict. All of the public is supposed to have the opportunity to weigh in on board
The
or
public
town
has
issues
the
before.
opportunity to weigh in.
But what I'm
any
saying
one of
is
these
that
meetings.
anybody who's sitting at the table, if they want to speak as a member of the organization, are required to leave the table and make clear to the public that the words that they're saying are not the words of them as a commission member, but they're the words of them as a member of that third-party organization. That didn't happen. Time and time again, I just ask you, go back and look at the minutes. Go back and look at the video, excuse me. Time and time again.
Point taken. I don't know the point made, but thank you for what I will characterize as a sincere concern. And it's not easy to take time out of life to express a sincere concern. And I mean that sincerely. Conflict of interest, I'll be the first to raise my hand, can become very, very cantankerous, very, very damaging. And we can share, and not pointing fingers, how imperfect we are about that. You've raised an important point. Thank you. I don't want to,
Excuse me.
I don't think it's beneficial to us to go down a, you should have done that, you should have done that, you should have done that, you know, right on down the line on this. I think you've made your point, you've made a request that based on your concern, you'd like to see something, I'm not sure what your words were, rescinded or canceled or something to that effect. I think with your knowledge of public meetings, you probably would agree what you mean is a revote superseding a pre-vote, because we don't retract, we just move forward. And if there's a different position that needs to be established, we do that according to the procedures of motion and second and discussion and vote.
Can,
If I
Right.
could, on that point, what I would suggest, however, is that there is some case law that establishes what should happen when there's a conflict of interest that's discovered after the fact. And again, I'm not making up
Yeah.
this stuff on my own. What I'd suggest is look at the New Hampshire Municipal Association guidelines on this. As I said to the selectmen, it's all there, and it explains very carefully where you hit conflict of interest. And again, in my opinion, this is clearly in that territory, which is why I'm bringing it to your attention. But I understand your point, and I understand, you know, that belaboring this ad nauseum is not helpful. I will say that I appreciate your listening to me, because it is an important matter to me. It's a property right issue. Now, at the end of the day, no trees were cut, no trail was passed, and I acknowledge that. You know, but what I will say is, as I said to the town administrator in an earlier communication, is one of the things that happened as a result of this process with both the commission and the board of selectmen is a diminishment in my ability or my confidence that my rights will be considered and that the property rights of the owners are being as carefully attended to as they should be when a new neighbor, in this case being the town, comes in and exercises what they see as their authority on their property. Now, again, I know that what I'm going to hear is, we never gave permission to anybody to use anything but town property. Again,
You're doing actually pretty good. Just stop with the, you know, somebody else. I don't know what your position is. I don't know where your thoughts are leading. You don't know where my thoughts
No.
are. So let's just take it down a little bit and say, I might presume that you think something, because it's a bold statement to say, I know where you're coming from. I know what motivates you, or I
appreciate that,
Just
Chairman.
langu-
I do.
language is really
Language is
important.
very important, and what I would suggest
so,
is,
so you
however,
presume that
However-
there's a position, and we can go forward from that point.
absolutely, but what I would also suggest is that the citizen has the right to state their position as they see it. And that's all I've done here, as I see it. I am not a judge in this case. You know, I'm just presenting my side of the story. I recognized a long time ago that there's always three sides to every story. Yours, mine, and the truth,
Well,
right?
And,
That's
and
the way it
along
works.
with rights go responsibilities.
Of course,
And
and,
you're exercising responsibility along with rights. I appreciate that.
well,
And I hope that you're admonishing us to exercise responsibility. Well taken, well taken.
and you're admonishing me to exercise responsibility. Well taken.
And all within restraint, we can figure something out. You can teach us something, and I don't presume that that'll be satisfactory. I hope so.
To be
You know-
clear, my satisfaction is, I mean, I've already raised the issue. It's already got the attention I think it needs to prevent it from happening in the future. I've already got the select board to agree that this town needs to reestablish an ethics committee, and I think that would help educate members, volunteer members of commissions and boards and everything else on where these lines are. Because I know what you get for training is nothing. You know, unless you go out on your own, or in my case, I was sent to it by the school board. I got some of the training, that's how I
So
learned
you would
about these
know that
things.
the conflict of interest premise is on the individual.
do.
It's not on the board, the commission, it's on the individual to identify in the individual's
Right,
train of thought, hold on. This is being asked, and I'm this. And I'm in this position. It's a
course.
difficult thing, it is prone to, oversight. It is very rarely done intentionally, as an act of oversight.
and
Very
again,
rarely is there malfeasance, is there an intentional thing? And the third thing is, I can't step back here and say, Sherry, you have a conflict of interest.
no, of course not.
I can't say, Steve, Mike, you got a conflict of interest, stop it. You know, step away, go out, whatever. That is highly improper.
Any more than you can discipline any member of this board or commission.
So, where I would hold you up is, you're asking for a fix, and you've said there are procedures to address after the fact, and that requires a conclusion that, yes, somebody, how am I to do that? Somebody's gonna conclude with authority that, all right, this person acted in a conflict of interest, therefore we need to undo something. So I would encourage you to share that with us, those remedies, if you will,
Can I just say,
based on your understanding, and there is an educational opportunity there, and we can consider that. It's much better done, much more solidly done in a written petition or even a recommendation. Dear Conservation Commission, we had a discussion, please look at these items. You know, I hope we can move towards better operations in the future. And frankly, I hope that through going forward and operating in good faith, learning things along the way, that at some point down the road, you, Luke Drake, say, all right, maybe it was worth my while, especially because I see evidence, I see proof, I see indication that they were listening. And I contend to you that we are. The undoing something is a point where I'm squishy. I'm not sure that is a appropriate place for this commission at this point.
And I would leave that up to you as a commission to discuss amongst yourselves. That's not my place to argue that point. I've made my point, I've made my request, and now it's up to you.
How many other times has this happened? I've only been on the board for a year.
never.
But hold on a second, Ray, I wanted to let Steve speak, and hold that thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is really short. So, nothing actually happened. There's no agreement that was ever signed per the motion, per the minutes, on multiple meetings. So you gotta understand that. The
You've
town.
stated it several times, yes, I do
I just want, I
understand.
mean, so there's nothing to undo. I want that in the records. I mean,
I think
it just,
you've got it
nothing ever
there.
happened. So, I mean, you said we gave permission, and we're talking about undoing something that actually didn't happen, because it never went to the attorney and never got signed by the town. So if anybody went out there and did something, they didn't really have our permission to do it.
So is your instruction to me, then let it happen, and then come to us?
No, you're missing the point. So, what we voted on, that you're asking us to undo, was an agreement to go to the town attorney for review and then the proper official in the town to sign it. That didn't happen.
No, sir, that's not accurate.
That's not in the minutes?
No, sir.
I can read it to you.
Sir, may I?
You may, but I mean, would you like me to read it?
Chairman, I object. I object to the constant overruling and the interruptions.
It's not an overruling. I just want to be factual.
I'm gonna let the vice chair have his moment. You'll have an opportunity, plenty of opportunity to recharacterize and, you know, this is what we do. It's a little messy to get to a point of better understanding, and that's ultimately where I want us to be tonight.
I mean, that was my only point, Luke. I mean, it's not, I don't want to argue with it. It's fine. I'm not trying to overrule you or anything. I can only go by what the minutes say. I mean, granted, we can go back and review, but I mean, I already read it once. I mean, the thing was that we were going to, you know, again, the commission could authorize a use agreement for October to May drawn up by the town attorney. I don't think that got signed, and that's all we voted on. That was my understanding of the vote. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it got signed. I haven't seen
I
it.
have not challenged that you as a commission signed off on the agreement, because as I recall, you discussed that it wasn't your place. It would have to go before the Board of Selectmen. And I have addressed my concerns with that board.
Yeah.
So,
I'm saying the
again,
agreement didn't get signed, I don't think.
that agreement didn't get signed. My
Right.
concern, however, specifically, is with the vote of the board to allow for an action prior to an agreement being signed. Because if you look back at the total set of minutes from May and June and October, what you'll see is that the third party is petitioning to say, hey, guys, you know, we tried to get somebody in here, we can't get him in here. We know we should do more work on clarifying this, but we don't have the time, and, you know, we got a crunch here. Can we get in there? If I can get in there before November, you know, then I'm good. And this commission said, lacking some of the documentation that they would normally have in due process, said, yeah, all right, we'll give you 1 year, and then you'll have to come back to us with the survey results from the right-of-way, and there was some description of center pinning and all of that sort of thing. So again, it's not the idea that the town was giving access to the snowmobile club for using of the right-of-way on the public land. That's your right. What I'm just suggesting is, as a neighbor and a butter to my properties, that should have come up, and it didn't. And again, it's not that the town wasn't provided the information necessary to draw those conclusions, because they were on multiple occasions, including by the petitioner, including on the map that was provided that shows clearly the green boundaries as opposed to the yellow tax maps. And that's my point, is that you had the information in front of you, but that the decision was made based on the input from the petitioner that you could get around that there wasn't a connection between those two pieces. That's all. And what I'm suggesting is, as a commission,
So,
the next time somebody comes before you to petition for that kind of access, look carefully at what the boundaries are, because we're talking right at that boundary point. How do you get from here to there?
within the skill set and the energy of our volunteers, we give it every possibility of doing that. We don't hire anybody to do work on those situations. We don't have anybody with a dedicated job of doing that type of research. So what we do and what we did, as I understand it, is put that back on the petitioning entity and say, provided your statements are correct, provided you're actually on town property and what you're planning on doing, this is where we can, you know, consider your request and potentially work with you towards a agreement. So, I'm sure you know limitations of volunteer bodies.
Oh, I do.
And I think sometimes those limitations are pretty glaring after the fact, or they don't come into refocus until another party tries to sharpen that focus. So, something that's been kind of tumbling around since the beginning of the year, is kind of fraught with being recharacterized with sort of crystal vision after the fact. So we had discussions. We had an idea. We, as a commission, say, all right, petitioner, you've expressed your interest. You've laid some contentions on the table. We can work with you or we can't. And we said, all right, we can work with you. And that's kind of the default of this commission, is whether it's working with you, Luke Drake, because just for instance, maybe you're into mowing hay in a field, and we got a field and we'd like to have it hayed. Then we'll go back and forth, but maybe somebody over next to you doesn't like the way you hay. And if that person says, this guy Luke's a bum after the fact, look what he did, he actually hayed on my property from your property, is that then on us? Or is that just part of human nature? Things get messy,
Sure.
and we try as rational people after the fact to understand things better and redirect and not fix the past, but fix the
What happens in the
future.
future, which is what I'm here for, and so I can respect that. However, there were other entities involved. This did go before the attorney in discussions about the right-of-way. And so one of my concerns is that even in those discussions, it was apparently more about whether or not the snowmobile club could overlay on top of the existing right-of-way.
Well, I think what
But there was,
what we could do in backing up is say, all right, there's another entity, a third party, this person should be at the table now so that we can, handle any sort of concerns. Maybe we don't look at things the same and we have that discussion up front. So I think that's a takeaway for this commission. Are we required to notify and invite someone? Typically not. There are a few specific things where we try to follow the letter of the law. And I think in hindsight, sure, you say, I'd rather be speaking with Luke Drake in May than in December. I'd like this to be a short meeting. I would like to have it when pandemic numbers are way down instead of way up. I would like not to be wearing, you see how this goes. So I would hope that you can walk away here as not so much an aggrieved party as a maybe more tired, but maybe also more satisfied that you get a chance to voice your concerns and you get a fair opportunity to lay it out there. And I hope that you've found that tonight. We're not going to agree on every bit and piece. If there is a bit and piece that, is a hang-up going forward, well, by golly, let's identify it and deal with it. So I hope you've had an opportunity to at least be able to step away from this and say, maybe better than even odds, they get most of what I was trying to let them know. And maybe, just maybe somewhere down the road, there'll be a better opportunity or another opportunity for me to, help them along in what they're trying to do too. Maybe we have more concurrence of interest than conflict of interest.
well, again, were I inclined to make this a deal, I'd have done that. I mean, outside of this, I like to address things directly with the folks that I'm having the issue with, and that's why I'm here. That's why I took the time to come down and talk to you all. Same with the Board of Selectmen. I have a concern, as you said, I've stated it. I will say that I do believe you heard me. I will say that not every member of this board has been as open and listening. I feel like there have been folks that are a little bit more contentious, and that's understandable. Those are personality types as well. I get that, I can be contentious as well. So I get it. And again, I do appreciate that this wasn't something that you again, plotted over or any of that. This was an accident. But my point I believe I've made multiple times, and so I'll not repeat it, is that I just think that you need to pay closer attention when we're talking about these property line issues, and particularly when the town has already been provided the surveys for all of the boundaries in question. There was no need to rely on the tax map. The town already had all that information. I got it as an abutter from both those parties. And again, one other thing that I'll say, and this isn't anything on you, but the right-of-way that's identified is not memorialized in the deed. Now, again, I've talked with Spiniff about that, and I like the work they do. I would give them access, that's not an issue. But, it's got to be clear, because an agreement with one person, that person walks out of the room and the next person's obligated to it. That's got to be, carefully
Yeah.
memorialized.
Well,
So I'll leave you folks to finish the rest of your meeting. I get that, you've got other work to do. I think I've said, as you mentioned, I've said what I have to say. I do think I've been heard. Whether or not I've been agreed to or wholly listened to remains to be seen. But I will also continue my involvement and hopefully set straight some of the issues that I see that are fundamentally ethics issues, and to be perfectly honest, just a lack of education on what the rules are regarding those. Because as a land use commission, they clearly apply to you guys. And I don't think you're aware of them. And I think you need to be. And so one of the things I'm hoping for out of this is that anybody who steps into one of these positions gets briefed on what the boundaries are of the game. Because you don't want everybody coming in here chewing on you about these sorts of things. And if anybody here is completely unaware, as I'm sure the members of the Snowmobile Club were, about the conflict of interest requirements, how do they know? How do they know that they ought to recuse themselves? That's not on them if they haven't been provided that information, although we all know that, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Nonetheless, I do think the town has a responsibility to help educate volunteer members of these boards and commissions on what the boundaries of the playing field are. So that's one of the things I'm trying to accomplish, and I'll continue to work outside of this commission to get done. And it's not by way of anything but making sure I live on a farm. Every now and again I step in a pie. I try not to do it twice, if I know where that one is. And that's all.
I sense,
I would sense that if a lot of people in town were to scrutinize the boards, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, but as you're saying, keep a close eye, then as a volunteer, and I would say probably most of the volunteers on the board, would just not bother. I got on this board to try to do the town some good, to review plans and make sure that people weren't doing illegal things.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm gonna have to take courses and spend time, a lot of time learning all the laws like a lawyer, I work 24/7 at my business. I'm a very busy person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time.
Okay, and
I'll walk away.
Ray, there's a very, that's an important thing to be aware of, and I'm sure Luke's aware of that.
I don't need to
You
be
know,
looked, I don't need to be looked at as a bad person,
same here.
and
But
that someone
let's-
is gonna do something wrong, and if I will, I'm walking away. I don't need it. I'm a citizen too. So I'll become a citizen and step away from all of this stuff. I don't need it, not doing it for any kind of gain.
We've all said that. We've all said that to ourselves at one time or another,
Well,
I'm sure.
I mean it.
Yeah.
I've offered to, I want to step away from the snowmobile club in the worst way, but nobody else will do what I do. Nobody. So I'm gonna do it.
If I may, Ray, I'd like to wrap this up. I think, I'd like to characterize as this. Life is messy, and it's been that way, and it'll always be that way, because we're of a certain nature as a creature on this earth. But when Mr. Drake comes in here, and I think he gives us a level of respect as well as a level of concern, but he comes in here as a proponent of building better community. And I think you serve here on this commission as a proponent of building a better community. And sometimes to get there, you gotta go through a little bit of discord and pain. But, you know, I appreciate that we're here to build a better community, and I appreciate it when somebody does a difficult thing and says, hold on, I've got some observations, but I'm gonna take the time to share them with you. Thank you, Luke, for proposing building a better community and a better culture within our community. You know, I think we got a special place here, and I think each member's activity on this commission, and I think our guest activity as a property owner, but also as a concerned citizen, is to be characterized as an attempt to make an investment in making things better. And I hope we can walk away from this saying, yeah, that was painful, but we don't have to agree on everything, but we're working actually really better than 80% towards common purpose. It might be much more than we realize. So thank you, Luke. I'd love to have last word on this one, but I'd also love anybody else who hasn't spoken to share thoughts. This is not about an individual, it's about, you know, our roles as a public body, and that's not to be usurped by any chair or vice chair or any position within it. Any thoughts, Mike?
Point heard and understood. I think we covered it.
Same.
So look, I'd say more common purposes, we'll learn, and sometimes we'll disagree, that's okay. That's okay. But mostly towards common purposes. And thank you for taking the time out to not just speak as a property owner with a concern, but also as a community member with the hope that we can manage our togetherness as a community in better ways and more agreeable ways.
You're welcome, and thank you for your attention. Good night, folks.
Yep, thank you, Luke.
Conflict of interest, a gift that keeps on giving. Funny thing is, we really have so much more confluence of interest. We really, in all these cases that have been brought up with finger pointing, we really have so much more confluence of interest than any notion of there being a conflict. Try to make things work out. So, thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Far from perfect, we keep trying. Steve, any update regarding the update? Clearly Jeremy's not able to make it tonight. He thought at one point, I think, that he was gonna be here. Matthias thought at one point that he could maybe dial in remotely. Neither one of those has happened. Is there?
I told him no. I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't an option.
Right.
And Naomi told him no, it wasn't an option. Whatever. No, we're just gonna punt on that for to January, and we've got some forestry related issues to run through, but. Whatever you wanna
Well,
say.
let's play with the agenda here as we get
Yeah.
forestry as a first word under the top section on items. Let's go ahead and take them away.
Okay, so we've got some bills to pay. I mean, those, I think, can all come out of, they're identified and they're all previously things that we approved, so I think you just send those for payment.
Yeah.
The bills in for the Poor Farm study, that turned out to be indeed all of our property. Next step there is, to see how Laura wants to tackle that. Had never really heard back. I guess Naomi, you might want to ping her and just see who's gonna call Mr. Cargnano. I mean, to me, I would just share that with him, but, that's a legal thing, so get Laura's opinion and, proceed with that as she sees fit. So we have a payment to make on that. I think that was out of the town forest account. They'd billed us. Did everybody see the bill from Forco? So it's all previously approved. Matthias, we were tackling just like finishing up the Eastman plan. He didn't get the final to us this morning. So I guess that'll get approved next meeting potentially. He did mention that I think the harvest is done and there was more revenue than expected from Toby Hill, because we did, we paid them to administer that, but it turns out that there was actually some revenue generation that they didn't expect, so we're gonna get a check for that. Not sure what the total was.
Did that already show up on the register?
No, it's not there yet. They
Okay.
didn't send the check yet. They were waiting from scale slips and a final payment from
Okay.
the logger. Yeah, that's not in there yet. We got, the last couple things that we do this time of year is just the way the forest account works is the selectmen are the agents who expend, the town has to vote on it. So we had a, discrepancy that got corrected with the financial report that just came out now based on our very final vote on what money was paying for Barden. So that got fixed.
Excuse me, there is a
Sorry.
So there's as of today, there was, it was like 60 grand or something in there.
64 perhaps.
Beth, yeah, here we go. Okay, so here's my suggestion. So we've got 64,412 in there. We've got money that's gonna get paid out for that survey work, and then I think that came out of town forest. And then we got some outstanding bills that are, that we've got from Laura Breyer. And so,
Hold on a second on that thought. Mark, did you see that report on the ledger?
Yes.
So, usually we kind of motion enough to pay for management and then make some available for land acquisition on 2 warrant articles, but viewing that, I think if we authorize 30,000, it's gonna bring us down to around 30 plus a little bit of revenue that's coming in. I would just assume not appropriate any money for any acquisition this year, and just so I created a warrant article that's, this is kind of like an up to amount. It's not like we're spending it all, but just the usual generic language that licensed forestry services and, things that we need to spend for the upkeep and maintenance of town forest. So, same article as last year. Nothing's changed on that. So I'd be looking for a motion on that one. That's, with the idea to just leave some money in the bank in case we need to, do that next year. I'm not sure when the next time we'll have a harvest that has some revenue coming in. Not really tracking on that, but don't really want to wipe the account completely out.
Excuse me, Andy.
So,
Go ahead.
The report I was referring to was a report on the Barden property. I didn't get any,
Yeah, that's,
a report on the Barden property? Is there a report on the
this
Barden?
one's called Updated Fund
This
Balance
vote.
Account.
no, I did not get that.
You got it? Thank you. You're quicker than I am, that's for sure. Are you,
No,
are you?
I'm asking, are you? I can.
This is Gmail?
Yes.
I got it. So hopefully that shows up pretty soon.
So, in any event, just wanna,
And what Steve's referring to is a town forest account. Follow it all the way over to the right. You'll see the 64 balance with a bunch spoken for based on invoicing and the position that perhaps this is a year to hold on, trying, with the low balance, hold on, trying to authorize additional expenditure for land purchase, town forest purchase.
and so remember, the way the two funds that we have access to work differently. We're the agents to expend from the conservation fund, and there's no vote by the townspeople, other than, there's requirements to hearings and that sort of thing, if it's a land purchase. So, I'd like to move this forward, I guess, as a motion to provide, this 2021, the article for 22 vote. It's the same language, to expend 30,000, as
Second on the
written.
motion?
I'll second the motion.
Who made the motion?
Steve.
Steve,
So Steve's made a motion, Mark has seconded to advocate putting forward this town forester, licensed forester services warrant article to the selectmen to be included on the town warrant. Any other thoughts on it? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All in favor?
Do you want to just run through this other draft article? It's not forestry, but.
Sure. The second article proposed says, shall the town designate town-owned parcels, map 408?
Yeah, it should say lot 120, not in lot 129.
408, lot 129 containing 19.53 acres, and map 401, lot 17 containing 31.94 acres as conservation land to be managed by the Conservation Commission. And I can speak to that second lot. This is in North Weare. I do not abut it. I know of it.
thank you.
I don't think I've actually even set foot on it. It is a lot that is very much the majority wetland on essentially a paper road, I believe, private road, and it is contiguous with other similarly designated town-owned properties as conservation property. So it is building a block in an area we've been building for a long time, both by purchase and by designation of tax forfeited properties. This was another tax forfeited property. Decent acreage, and it is high up on the Kentucky River watershed, which juts into Weare in a few places. And this is one neat one right up on the watershed divide. Close to uplands, and we've also conserved a decent chunk of the uplands through purchase over the last 20 years or so.
That's a 2016 tax deed date, so that's enough time that's gone by, right?
Actually, that doesn't count anymore.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, over the Bedford, there was a Bedford court case by a Bedford developer. No matter, You don't have to hold it for 3 years, you can turn around, sell it, do whatever, but you have to give them, there's no more putting it in the bank. You know how we did that first auction?
Yeah,
We ended up with like $200,000. Can't do that anymore. You'd have to go back and send it to the court, and then they would divide it up amongst the last of the lien holders. Ever since the Bedford decision, I don't remember what the developer's name was.
okay. So I got the right, I mean, the right map and lot number and everything there, and it's mostly all wetlands. It makes pretty good sense.
And the other one, Steve, you wanna talk to the location on that one?
Yeah, it's up on kind of the foot of Mount William, off Mount William Pond Road. It's 19.53 acres. That whole area, you know, I mean, obviously there's a big landowner that everyone would always be interested in, but it's, you know, not being, the adjacent land is not conservation, but it's a huge unfragmented piece. So it butts right up to that. You know, decent sized chunk, 19.53. I think it's on kind of a hill, so pretty high and dry, just forested. I don't think the access is great for, you know, like a town forest, but you have to figure that out after the fact. But it's definitely a big enough chunk where, you know, it'd be worth putting it into conservation. Just to help with the idea of kind of wildlife corridors, you know, connecting things together.
We haven't done this very often.
It's been a little while. We did it like Chevy Hill, and we've done it. Yeah, we've done it. Just been,
Maybe over the last 23 or 4 times at most.
you know, Pat was still on the commission when we did, yeah, we did one. But yeah, it happens.
And let's be clear about this, it is, you know, if it is easily done, it is easily undone. This
Yeah.
offers no permanence, it offers a sort of point in time. So, makes good sense. It's, you know, well within the roles of a conservation commission to advocate for such. And, we'd have to figure on being present at, deliberative to, essentially share the reason for the interest with anybody in the functioning deliberative body on that day, if there is concern or question.
So on these types of lots, it either goes up for auction or the town takes it for conservation, is that what I'm getting?
No, it goes undesignated for any, there's no limit that I know from, it just becomes a town-owned undesignated property
So
until something is done to it for whatever reason.
Naomi can chime in, but there's something different about above. So the Board of Selectmen can auction parcels off, but there was something different. There was an acreage cutoff where they gotta bring it to the voters, right?
5 acres.
Yeah, so these ones are big enough where, you know, those are kind of the options. The more recent boards of selectmen, in my opinion, have chosen to auction off little annoyed pieces that have been laying around, whereas distant past boards just let them sit. So we had gone through, you know, in the distant past, and it didn't feel like there was any urgency to do anything, but I think now with, you know, the different thinking that we don't want to just hang on to undesignated stuff, that if we want something, we better say something.
Hmm.
So if we don't want it, that's fine too, and they could just bring it up and auction it off. I mean, either way, but I think these make sense because of their proximity, and, you know, absolutely the one up on the north side of town, and, you know, this one's a chunk of forest that's, you know, there's forest around it, and you can kind of think about wildlife corridors. It kind of goes, you know, so that's on that side of 114, then you skip across the other side of 114 is the piece that we were just dealing with.
Mhm.
And then further south on that side of 114, you know, there's the big private landowner, but then it goes into like, to Wood, to Hawks. So, you know, you just start to think about corridors and kind of lining up, you know, kind of makes a little bit of sense, but, I think it's good to, you know, see if the selectmen will go along with it. If they don't, that's their prerogative, I think.
The other way property has come, conservation property, is from donation. That's happened a time or two
Yeah.
also, so.
Yep.
It is, it's meaningful to have something show up when somebody does an Access, GIS, whatever, search into property ownership, using that. Tax map, as imperfect as it is based to look at things, it shows up as Town of Weare Conservation Commission, which is a decent thing to acknowledge in the tax card.
Yeah, more importantly in the town report, I think is, and we tried to, so we had a project where we actually went through, Meadowsen went through and tried to get the exact date when everything was designated, either town forest, town conservation land, and we also have like all the deeds and the book and pages and the plats. Because it becomes important, so it doesn't get lost, but ultimately that should go in every town report, kind of in the back, there's a list of everything the town owns. And, you know, so these would show up instead of undesignated as conservation. And, you know, we talk about like stitching trails together and that kind of thing, who knows, maybe, you know, in the future, some of these may have some benefit in that whole exercise too.
All right, so we need a motion and a second on this proposed article.
Okay, so everybody, before we motion that, please cross out after 408, and I guess most importantly, Naomi, cross it out, because you probably got kind of the official version there. So cross out the "and" after 408. So I'm gonna make a motion, shall the town designate town-owned parcels, map 408, lot 129, containing 19.53 acres, and map 401, lot 17, containing 31.94 acres, as conservation land to be managed by the Weare Conservation Commission.
Second.
Somebody's got a second?
I
Ray just
Ray?
did her
Oh,
next
thanks,
one.
Ray.
My voice didn't go through my mask.
It jumped right over Steve.
It
It
just
is
stayed
tough.
inside.
All right, any other thoughts on that one, folks? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor?
So, well, we're on a town forest management roll.
Yeah.
All right. So Naomi has been working on burning the Barden structures, and I've been talking with Jeremy about getting, not Jeremy, Benji about getting rid of the debris. So a couple things, I worked on it a little bit today and talked to Benji yesterday. So we gotta, I could take a drive by there. Benji spotted a few kind of flags, like there's some I know the propane tanks just got filled, and that he didn't notice, I think their company owned, so we should be able to call the company and tell them, get them out of there. So there's full propane tanks. Benji also said like there's a bunch of junk in there, and I talked to the fire chief, he said the same thing. So we gotta figure out how to get that stuff out of there, and then either burn or demolish, and that's kind of the second part of it. So I talked to the chief a little bit today, and I don't know if you talked to him after I talked to him at all, but it was, he seemed to think there was kind of like limited value in, you know, from a training perspective. So we just have to decide whether we just want to demolish or want to burn. He didn't care one way or the other when I talked to him. We do have to do the asbestos work, so Naomi was trying to get that together.
Do we, after it, let's say it was burnt, do we still have to pay for somebody to come and get the debris, or can it be buried on site?
Benji's gonna get it out of there.
He's gonna get it out of there?
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion to appropriate an amount, but, I think I double the amount now if we, you know, just to leave enough wording in there for demo. But the other problem is like, Benji and I talked about the pitfalls of hiring someone to clean the place out, cause he had some experience with that. That's the thing, so the chief wasn't sure what was in there and what could be burned and what couldn't. He'd have to go look at it, but he said there's a lot of stuff in there.
When he went over, the radio was playing.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they went in and they thought, oh God, we gotta find somebody.
Yeah,
Because the radio was playing away.
Is,
and
is
he-
this a big
It's
structure?
kinda creepy.
No?
they're not that big.
So
'Cause I've
is he-
demolished several
Did he move
buildings.
out? Maybe?
Yes.
And
Has he moved out?
sometimes it's cheaper just
Has
to
he moved
Get a
out?
dumpster.
Yeah, he's out.
get a
Because
dumpster
I
and load
didn't
it all
call
out.
for the electricity or
But-
Yeah, we need to cut the
Right,
electricity.
because if the fire chief's gonna burn it, he wants it off the building and taken back so that it's not gonna get in the way.
Yeah, we have to take the drop off.
Right.
Yeah,
Have to
If-
call
if the
public
fire-
service.
Please do. We'd like the
Well, I was
utilities
just
to be.
gonna I mean, Eversource that we took was,
Well,
we took over its date, and I don't know, I would've thought he would've called them, because I'm not gonna pay any bill, so,
all right.
you know.
He should have done a disconnect notice with his account number.
He also should've done it with Grand State if he's got something.
Oh, is the phone still going in there?
I don't know. I didn't go
Yeah,
there. I'm not going there, that sounds like a movie.
I'll call him tomorrow. I know, that's kind of the, so that's, we gotta get someone to clean it out. Benji wasn't real keen on his guys doing it.
So you'd have to have somebody licensed to remove the asbestos.
No, we have
We
to
just
sample
see if
these.
We just gotta
guys.
see if there
This
is
is-
a-
Sample.
Yeah, yeah.
we gotta do the
Okay.
sample.
That's a different issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was gonna be my, if, I was, speaking as if it did have asbestos, so.
Okay.
What is the benefit, say, the asphalt shingles contain asbestos, or, whatever, something in the house? What is the benefit of removing all of that and then burning the structure as opposed to just
Leaving it,
demoing it and considering it all
yeah.
asbestos, disposing of it in
Wow.
that manner?
I think even if you
I know the
demo
cost
it,
would be much higher
Oh,
as
yeah.
it's asbestos. I don't know if those numbers have been looked at.
No, so I talked to the, yeah, I know what you're saying. So I talked to,
Livingston?
yeah. So unfortunately, we're out of the residential exemption on that whole thing. But, I think first step is figure out if we have asbestos. It plays into both burning and demolition either way. And then, yeah, you gotta make a decision, is it cheaper to remediate or not? And like you said, I mean, you probably could dispose of the whole thing. So we need to do the testing and have a rational discussion about that. But the stuff I'm talking about is just, has nothing to do with that. It's just junk.
The stuff
With
inside the
this
house.
stuff, yeah.
Is it putrescible junk or is it just stuff? Furniture?
I didn't put eyes on, it sounded like stuff. Yeah, so,
And that would have to be taken out and disposed of as solid waste, or, I'm sorry, yeah, as regular old household waste before anything would be handled as demolition waste? I understand it can't be burned,
Well,
No,
furni-
demolition can-
furniture
it
could
can
be
go as
burned.
but if we're not burning,
no, things
Could it
like
all be-
Freon containing, so Benji was just talking about, if there's electronics, that goes in one spot. He works on a revolving fund, so he can't eat the cost, we've gotta pay for it.
Yeah.
So, when you go to, just picture this as you go into the transfer station with a bunch of crap that has to get sorted out, this has to go here, Benji's gotta get paid for this propane tank, TV goes there. So we gotta pay for wherever that stuff goes. If there's tires, we pay for the tires. So talking about that, so we got a plan for that. We've got a, plan for whatever we end up getting at, if we don't burn it, it's gonna be fully demolished. We gotta get we were talking about, lining up a trucking company and having it trucked out of there. So I think maybe we ought to just punt until next meeting, but try to get the asbestos stuff under contract this meeting and authorize the funds for that. And then have a rational discussion about and try to get eyes on what's really in there, and then talk to Ken and say, did you really get everything you wanted or not? So do you have those numbers that we can authorize?
No, I've been downstairs in the tax office, Steve.
Can you, to expedite this, do you think you can ask the Board of Selectmen, just waive the policy, or can we just appropriate some money and maybe try to get it out there one way or the other?
I'll work at it. I think I can.
So I'd like to,
Because your next meeting's January 12th.
yeah, I'd like to
The
make,
thing is, if you're gonna Benji do it and we have crappy weather,
Yeah,
it's gonna be in between, because those guys are gonna be out salt and sand and everything else, so.
yeah, they'll
It's
park it
gonna be
next
a
week.
project in
Yeah.
between,
Yeah,
but
there's not too many days up there, if you get Sizemore or someone up there, he was talking about this, yeah.
the big,
One guy with an excavator and a thumb is gonna,
yeah,
Tear it up in no time.
yeah, we need to figure out the asbestos part of this.
yeah.
when was that built? I thought that was built in the mid-eighties. And if it was in the mid-'80s, asbestos was gone in the early '70s, so it shouldn't be a problem.
I don't think it's that new, is it?
You can find it on a tax card.
Yeah, I'm just gonna look at that.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's
So,
over in that.
you think 5 grand's probably enough for the sampling?
I would think so.
Can you send them over to, what's her name's place there? Same time?
Chipmunk Falls.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Might as well do that all at once.
No, that's an access, very different access issue on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, you think it'd be hard for them to drive down there? Well, I guess if the snow.
Mm. Yeah, you would.
All right, skip
Supposed
that.
to be
idea.
60 on Saturday,
I'm
so.
gonna advocate for
Okay.
natural removal on the other one.
Yeah, but you can't. You gotta go,
Yeah, I think
you gotta sample it.
built in the mid-'60s, that wouldn't.
All right,
We're
so
all done with that.
let's see what the tax card.
1 or 2, I think.
1990.
It was built in 1990? Yeah, there's not gonna be an asbestos.
Property card since 1990, Steve.
No kidding.
You-
So we still gotta do it.
Oh, yeah, you still gotta, it shows,
Probably won't cost much, though.
right, no.
I can't believe they built that. That's.
I was thinking mid-'80s, late '80s, that's what I was thinking, but,
The sampling will cost the same, but the demo will be a lot cheaper.
It was purchased in '73.
The roof is asphalt.
yeah.
The exterior says wood shingle / asphalt.
Mhm.
There's asbestos found in asphalt, not newer shingles, but.
Yeah, well, it's,
90.
it
There's
looks,
not, yeah.
it's got two dome things, so I'm
Yeah.
thinking that's where the asphalt is. Cause it says the exterior's got asphalt.
It is. It's on that geodesic dome in the picture, and then it's on the garage one probably too.
So if it's in really good shape, it probably has a nice bit of asbestos in it. If it's really crappy, falling apart, it probably didn't have any.
Looks like it's got shingles on it.
Yeah.
Almost looks like a metal roof.
Yeah, it does.
There's
So, what do
probably
you,
a bit of everything.
so Mike, you think you just pay for the whole thing as asbestos? Or
Well, I
cheaper?
would wanna ask, yeah, that would,
Yeah. All right.
I'm thinking those two dome things would probably be asbestos, but the other wouldn't be. It's got a metal roof and a
Yeah.
wooden shakes.
Yeah.
Not asbestos, asphalt.
Asphalt,
Asphalt.
not asbestos, asphalt.
You're thinking the two dome things would probably be asphalt shingles. Don't throw that.
Yeah.
No, but yeah,
Shouldn't
they,
have any asbestos.
they could have
there.
it in it.
Well,
1990,
no,
long gone.
no, not if it wasn't built in '90. There's no reason, unless you had a stockpile of shingles from '68 or '70.
Yeah. All right. So
You do it up to Steve. and
up to 5 grand out of the conservation fund to sample for asbestos.
I'll second it.
Conservation.
Yeah, conservation. That's our only option.
All right, Steve's made. Mike has seconded. So any further discussion? I don't know, that seems like it ought to be enough to get the ball rolling on something.
Yeah, sampling shouldn't be that much.
Okay. No other thoughts on that? Looking around the table, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Sounds like all in favor, tell me if otherwise. Okay. And that, I just want to ask this question now. If fire chief says it's no great benefit to his crew to burn,
Knock it down.
what's the benefit to us to have that element part of it? Saving price, quicker?
Well,
I
you're
think
gonna have
it's
to pay for a
faster
dumpster and
and
a
easier to demo the whole thing.
Yeah.
Probably.
Get a
probably
dumpster and
so.
an excavator and you'd be
excavator.
done in a half a
It'd be all
day.
done in
And-
a half a
and you're-
day, yeah.
You're not dealing with,
Yeah, you do
Ash
it
or
all.
you're
anything.
not dealing with ash and fire residuals.
Yeah, but, well, Benji was talking about, not a dumpster, but live loading into
Yep.
a tractor trailer or,
Yep.
a triaxle.
He's been up there enough to say what he thinks can get in there?
Benji went up there and looked at it. Yeah, he's concerned with all the stuff that's in the buildings. And the propane, we need to go take care of the power and go figure out that propane issue. I know,
The propane, yeah.
yeah, because the propane tanks, they gotta be emptied. If we own the propane tanks, they gotta still be emptied.
I'm guessing we don't.
I think we don't either, but Benji didn't look at I almost think Ken said that they weren't, they were like the least kind of ones. So all we need to do is just look at the company name,
Call 'em.
tell them to come get them.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a excavation there and knock it down, you might wanna, you should contact DigSafe, because you don't know what guy might have, stuff underneath, you know.
Well, that would be for the contractor.
That'd be
to
for
do
the
Be
that.
Benji.
demo contractor.
Yeah,
yeah.
Benji.
It has to be under their name by law,
Oh, it's under the town.
It's under the,
Right. but whoever does it has to call for the dig
Yeah,
safe.
Benji would.
Benji,
probably
yeah,
say.
Benji.
yeah,
We do it all the time.
So-
Yeah, Naomi,
All
on your
right, so
question.
that would tell us about asbestos, but do we need to get somebody, do we need to, like, hire somebody with
Yeah,
Garbage
I
truck
remove
to-
junk
to-
type of guy.
to get stuff out, or can,
Well, that's the thing,
Like,
if you
can
demo
a-
it, all the junk goes with the demo.
Well,
everything
that's-
goes.
Just scoop,
that's
Yeah,
what I
they
had
just put it
thought.
in the.
You chop
it
it
out.
out.
For the
100% sure.
Get rid
for
of
the
that all.
structure, you can do that. You know, fridge, anything that's not C and D, you can't just throw in a dumpster.
Right.
So,
So you would need somebody in there removing some
Appliances and,
TVs,
Yep.
things that are not a
what
structure.
about, like, old furniture?
no, that would be demo.
Not
That could
demo.
go down?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
You just break it up and put it in the,
Well, when we demoed houses, because I've demoed quite a few, everything went in that,
Dumpster.
the roll-off, the big trucks, they separate it at the facility. So if
Right.
I threw in the refrigerators, the stoves, the furnace, all that stuff, that
They-
all went in that truck.
They take it out, the
And
metal
they-
out.
They separated it at the facility. So when you're doing demolition,
Yeah.
as long as there's no asbestos or oil in the tanks, you can't throw away the oil tank with oil in it and stuff, but everything else goes in there and they separate it at the place.
Yeah, Benji, well, we'll have to get Benji to call whichever landfill it's gonna go to and see what they have. Cause like our C and D dumpster, I mean, you couldn't throw an appliance in there,
No.
you know, freon-containing stuff.
Most of the stuff I did went to Urkel over in,
Epping.
Epping.
So we'll,
All
let's,
right,
we'll
first
get you on,
thing,
Benji.
but we don't wanna find ourselves in February saying, are we gonna get some asbestos results? Because then we're way behind the eight ball on the
Oh, I mean-
timeline.
No, we just moved on that, I mean, we're good.
Hope so. I've also heard that we're triple and quadruple heading, so. Excuse me, town administrator,
I'll harass her.
on the asbestos sampling issue, do you think that's something that can reasonably be secured and taken care of within
Yeah, it's
a
just gonna
month's
be their
time?
time though. I don't know what anybody's scheduling out,
Right,
you know.
I have no idea on that either.
Yeah, I have no idea until I call and, I had a professor in school that they did it on the side. We had actually somebody here, it was them that did it.
Mm-hmm.
And checked the testing and did the testing here for it. Can't remember it, I'll think of it, but I'm sure I have it. But if they say, like anybody, oh, I'm out till January,
Yeah,
we're trying to get a furnace in the fire station, and they're out till January. You know, I'll do my best to get it as fast as I can, but we still have some other things to do too.
I'm sure, yeah.
Meaning, you know, we here, I'm only worried about today. There's a lot, we do push along as fast as we can.
Just do the best we can, you know, it's like, I mean, the selectmen gotta
And the
understand that.
90-day clock, they gotta understand that, and Sherry's sitting here, you gotta understand that if you're looking for a professional and they're not available,
they're not available.
it's out of my control.
Okay.
It's moving though, you know, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
We
it's
can go
not
and
like
give 'em
we're
an update.
sitting down doing nothing. You know,
Yeah.
the fire chief's
Well,
looked at
that's-
it, Benji's looked at it, we've
Yeah.
all kind of put our heads together to see what we can do the safest way, the fastest way, the cleanest way, you know, we've all got our part in it, and it's not like you're sitting there and on the 89th day wanting to do something.
Right,
You know, we've been starting, there's emails and everything else.
yeah, we can go in there and
Thank
tell
you.
them.
That's,
Now, the owner or the person that rented up there, not the owner, but the person that rented that building or lived in the building, is he, you know, do you have a number to contact him?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Steve-
I mean, he
Steve-
should,
Steve-
I'll give Ken a call and just, the only thing Ken told me was that he was gonna try to get the wood stove out of it. I mean, technically we own it, but I don't think we really care. He
Well,
bought a
no.
wood stove.
Almost
but-
piece of junk to move.
Yeah, let him take, he should be taking whatever, his personal items out of there anyway,
Well,
really.
whatever he left, it's ours. I mean, that's, I think we don't need to make sure there's like, no solvents or paints, that oil paint, so we gotta take a look at that. If there is, we gotta deal with that, and I'm sure Benji knows how to properly get rid of that. I don't know if do we have a hazardous waste manager in town?
We did hazardous waste.
In
the other day,
October.
No, I'm saying, do we have a manager specifically? No, okay, cause you need what's the number you need, there's like for the hazardous waste manifest, sign it and all that, there's some specifics.
You're talking on cans and bottles.
Generators,
you
yeah,
have to
your
you have to be
quantity
certified
generator.
for that.
Yeah, you do, yeah. Yeah, we get that, and then whether you're a small quantity generator, I guess maybe we're not a generator.
What it sounded to me like talking with Ken was there wasn't a whole lot of craftsmanship going on, so,
Good.
or maintenance for that matter.
I think it's unfortunate that he
So-
left everything behind, truly, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's the way
I
to
hate
go.
buying a house that somebody just left empty with full of garbage.
Well,
It happens.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. I'm set. Anything else on that one, Steve? We got it moving, keep it moving.
No, one other little forest thing, and that was it. It was
All right, let's hit the other force thing.
just the, it emailed Craig about the trails, and that was another big, concern of the selectmen, and so Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission is on tap for an update to the master plan. So Craig said he thinks we can get some of that in it. And I'll tell you just conceptually what I'm thinking. After my little vacation to Switzerland there is, I think conceptually how we approach trails in Weare has got to be, it has to change a little bit, just if we want to be successful at all. I mean, there needs to be people that want that. I mean, it seems like there's some vocal folks, but there's not a group, it's like you said, Ray, that wants to do all that work. And, so what I saw in Switzerland, it may or may not work here, but they tie their stuff together using roads, the conventional hiking trails that we think of, just anything. And they get signposts all over the place, so you know exactly where you are. So, I mean, that's our problem. I think if the town wants really like a network for bikes, mountain bikes, you gotta tie that up with Class 6 roads, with, conservation properties, with Class 5 roads. You gotta tie that all together. So that's all, I was kind of thinking where we ought to consider going with that. 'Cause our parcels, I mean, there's a couple of them, obviously we went through that exercise, but they're not gonna be meaningful to go anywhere or attract a lot of people. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing about New Boston's rail bed. I mean, maybe we can get access to our rail bed, but that would be like just a piece of the puzzle. So hopefully,
But here's the thing, it's always been the case, our rail bed goes nowhere.
but if you tie together with a Class 5 road or trail, so I'm saying there's gotta be a really big picture. But
Let's remember that Weare lost its rail before anybody else in the country practically was losing rail
Yeah.
spurs. There was a reason, because it was,
Well, you lost it, you lost part of it in
was-
36.
exactly, it's
And then
low-
in 38, the rest of it went.
and the
Yeah,
stuff up
it's
to the
underwater.
north was sinking under the bogs.
Yeah,
Like, we can go out there
Everything
and look
from-
now, the ballast eventually, if not replenished, can sink right down, push the peak down, and then it's all underwater.
yeah, that's what happened. So,
And that's unique to our North Weare situation, which
Yeah.
is very different than New Boston's along the river corridor.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that wasn't really the major point. And now the major point is we need to decide, because we get leaned on pretty hard about
We
that,
do.
but we need to decide if, what's feasible and what it's gonna cost and if people wanna pay for it, because it's expensive. But I mean, I don't know if it could ever be a destination. We've always been a funny town because we don't have like a real set downtown or any of that sort of stuff. But, so just that's kind of my thought, is to utilize that funding, to try to work it in with what Southern New Hampshire's doing with the master plan. Just, to kind of look at it a little differently.
It's a different kind of trail system, because all the, like Londonderry, Manchester, they got the rail trail
Yeah.
because of the rail trail. They got funding for that from the federal government because it's a rail trail. We don't have any of those options. We're out in the middle of the woods. There's all kinds of people that use those trails because they go places. But here, to cut a trail through the woods with no destination is, you'd almost have to look for a mountain bike club, if one exists, probably not in Weare. Or like, and I don't wanna say it, but I'm gonna,
I know where he's going.
like the snowmobile clubs that take care of their trails, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
stewards of the trail system. So if your land happens to have a snowmobile trail on it, the snowmobile club takes care of it.
That's right.
And so these trails would have to be taken care of by someone who is gonna have interest in them.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Well, you raise taxes and pay for it, you know, so.
Maybe you can talk to the snowmobilists and see if they'd like to put a trail in there.
But the
It's
problem,
fine if everybody complained, stepped up and helped out.
yeah,
Right.
That's the biggest problem.
Mm.
If you wanna be part of the solution, step up and be it.
But, you know, I gotta say this, and this is, I've walked the woods in Weare all my life. I've ridden horseback through the woods for years. And, quote, there's really no trail. I'm just walking out through the woods.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, when you say trails, you think of in the White Mountains. Well, yeah, they've got hundreds of thousands of acres up there. Of course, they gotta have a trail. People would be lost after they were a quarter of a mile in the woods. But in Weare, you can walk
So-
on a piece of land and be out to a road in an hour, anywhere.
Yep.
Are we gonna have a Weare High Peaks Trail, you know, that's gonna go up to our three hills that are over 1,000 feet across private lands and
Well,
make
that's
it
the
so
problem.
you can walk? No.
is you, there's so much private land around, it's tough to get a continuous trail
Trail.
to tie things together, because it crosses, I mean, the snowmobile, we're already in the issues where you've crossed private lands, and, you know, some people approve snowmobiles, but they don't want bicycles, and they don't want horses. So it's almost an impossibility, other than taking, similar like the Woods property, there's some trails through there, some of that's logging, created from logging.
Yep.
If you wanna go for a walk in the woods, that's a nice little walk around there, and you can make almost a full circle there
Yep.
on conservation land,
Which one are you talking about? I'm sorry. I
the
was-
Woods
Woods
property.
property.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
But that requires, good part of that was the logging,
Yep.
and the snowmobile club to maintain their piece that goes through.
Yeah, you're right. But Mark, you know, I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, think about, or I guess our concept of trails just has to be a little bit different. That,
Yep.
you know, you actually, part of it, you're walking down a Class 5 road, you know?
Yes.
or Part of it, you walk, you know, or, I mean, nobody ever, and it's, I'm just never on top of my game when I'm getting, you know, you get hit up about these things, but Farron Pond, my God, you can walk miles up
Yes.
around there, and those are all Class 6s, you know, but.
Yep,
Yeah.
that is a trail.
Yeah, but nobody calls it, it's Class 6 road, you can go walk to your heart's content,
Yeah.
it's probably way better than the rail trail in New
I
Boston.
mean, you wanna walk the Deeren? Go for it. You know,
Yeah.
somebody can pick you up on
Like
the other
all of
side
that
if you want.
for
you know?
years.
I'm just not fast enough to say we got that.
Back out
Well,
to the Four Corners and then back.
Here's
and,
the
yeah.
crux of the issue,
Yes.
I think, is what our town administrator mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, how do you, we're not visionaries. Yeah, you've been, you know, strong-armed, we've all been strong-armed a bit, but you had your eyes open over in Europe, and that's great, but, you know, to point at us and say, you guys have to be passionate about trails, what aspect of them? You know, what's your vision? You're saying we have to have a vision? Well, you know,
We gotta find somebody with a vision,
Yeah.
What
sub
about,
out the vision.
Yeah,
what about when we end up doing a cutting on a piece of land? What if we tell them that we want something clear cut, and then if we hire somebody for 3 days to go in and stump a 6-foot area or an 8-foot area through it, that they've cut out?
you really need to lay it out for sustainability, you know, I mean, because you'll look pay.
Right, but you'd look at it before, and then say, this area on this map here, I want this cut out completely, 8 feet wide, whatever, some amount. And then just hire somebody to go in and stump the thing.
Yeah, I mean, our scooter trails end up being pretty beat down, but it's maintenance. Yeah, no, you can do that, but I mean, I think my point is, a lot of times trails, you really need to go somewhere, not on just 80 acres or whatever.
correct.
So that's, hopefully like the master, the Southern New Hampshire maybe can take a look at that and see.
You'll
It
look
would,
for our input though, Steve, remember that.
huh?
You'll look for our input, so.
Yeah, and they'll broadcast it. Years ago, they put out like a questionnaire when they did the whole update. So I mean, they could throw a questionnaire out to people like, hey. So, just a thought, I don't know. I don't wanna
Well,
let that one die, cause we
you know-
got so beat up on it,
Right. And the way we have looked at them, the way we spent good money,
Yeah.
come up with a plan was, what can you do on this property?
Yeah.
What can you do on this property? It's without connection. It's more like,
Yeah.
all right, are we gonna turn the Eastman into a park? Are we gonna, make it so that you can push the stroller and sit on a bench and feed the squirrels? I mean, I don't think that's what we're looking at, looking for, but that could be someone's vision of what a trail is.
Yes.
Or, a hiking trail, are you gonna put Adirondack shelters out in the, out by Farron, because, now you can, move, say 6 miles a day, and you can do a 2-day hike in Weare, and you have way stations like they do in the Adirondacks, just waiting for you to hop in, there's so
Do you
many
want us to
different.
pause?
He's
I
got the
don't think
recording.
she cares.
There's so
Oh,
many,
okay.
so many differences in
Yeah.
potential use and styles,
Mhm.
I think it's just difficult.
and so little funds.
To the way
And
the
one
law-
thing I mentioned after our brouhaha was, well, should we throw a warrant article out there, say, hey, would the town like to, fund a bond for $500,000
Yes.
for trail development
Yeah.
and connectivity, evaluation and development? And see, all right, well, maybe that's too lofty of a number, but some number and say, all right, does this community value that so high that they're willing to dedicate community funds to it?
And that's where we go. You're exactly right. With the Southern New Hampshire planning, looking at it, maybe
might
they
have
could tell you what it would
people that are
take.
used to looking at, like, my wife loves to go hiking like in Clough. She'll park at the parking lot up there, the garage there, walk
Yep.
across there's trails that go around, and they basically go around, but they circle back. There's one in Manchester, right around Livingston Pond, or is it the one on Danny Webster? It goes all the way around the pond. It's a mile. It's a little pond, but it's a mile-long trail. It's a nice little walk. We used to go and do that. So maybe that's the kind of things, but you'd have to find a focal point. Like, most of these trails have a focal point.
Yeah.
You're either walking along the edge of a pond, or you're high enough to see a view. It can't be just in the middle of the woods, because people will get sick of that. Then you're wasting your money building a trail that nobody will use.
Yeah, some of it maybe just connecting things together and putting some signs up, because the other thing is like people, I'm like Sherry, I'm completely comfortable wandering through the woods anywhere, and I found that out at work, like, when the place is loaded with roads, but people still, until you handed them a map and like color-coded the trees, then they got more comfortable with going with the little roads that they normally would avoid. So it's funny, my concept of reality is like way different than a lot of other people's. That's what's so nice.
Maybe all we need is we need to change out Bolton Field, we need to put that sign, Bolton Field and Wood Family Forest, trailhead, huh? That
Yeah.
sounds pretty cool, doesn't it?
Well, in market, yeah.
And then we need to move the kiosk down into the Parks and Rec area so that it's not so easily damaged, and we have to like appropriate some of the surrounding town property to then announce, all right, go out here and follow, this little loop on the red, dots, and this little loop on the yellow squares, and look at this map, and then come back here, you could park down here.
Yeah.
That's one style, but that's,
It's an expense.
It is.
Large expense.
and does,
And who maintains it?
Right.
does Parks and Rec, does, that signpost, whoever put that in, say, oh, sure, put whatever you want here? Or is it, well, I don't know, this sign is for Bolton Field for, Parks and Rec and youth sports. It's not for mixed use. I mean, there are all sorts of,
The hardest thing is finding a
Ways.
coordinator that keeps it all together. We have the same trouble in the club. We've been wanting to do a new trail map for the last 3 years. Nobody wants to do it. So,
Time.
we haven't, it's time.
Yeah.
There's only so much
Limited
time.
volunteers, just like you guys.
Well, you gotta pay for it. I mean, something like that, you gotta pay for. So if people value it and they wanna pay for it, great. But
well, maybe we have an eye towards, and share this. Well, Board of Selectmen, well, interested former selectmen, well, whoever you are. All right, we're working towards, and a warrant article, 2023. And we'll do some legwork, but it can't be solely on the conservation fund to make it happen, so to speak.
Oh,
It's
no.
gonna
be way
take
back.
a much greater investment than
Yeah.
that to achieve, Destination Weare, marketing, sorts of things. If you're passionate and got enough motivated people to make something happen, then sure, they can campaign and try to, wrestle the funds versus a fire engine versus another cruiser or the road paving or whatever else the town wants to do with, putting roofs on buildings and all sorts of town obligations.
Or you just do an article and designate Benji Knapp as the trail meister.
So I think we got a notion there. We do have, a clear, well, not even clear. We do have points of interest that have been expressed. Some recent, some not so recent. I don't know, community forum? We haven't done one of those for anything in a long
God,
time.
that's been a while.
What's that?
That's been a while.
Yeah.
I don't think we wanna run it, though. That's the idea of throwing us to the Southern New Hampshire
Right,
Planning
right,
Commission.
sure.
I mean, we need to involve us, the planning board, and Parks and Rec, when they get going. So once this thing gets going, hopefully we can kinda meet and talk about,
Well, just schedule. Yeah, Parks and Rec are just loaded with people with, nothing better to do a joint meeting with Conservation Commission to talk trails. Like,
Yeah.
oh, sure, come to our meeting.
well, we might have, we have a
Maybe we
special
need to do
meeting.
that.
I mean, if you like the idea of, throwing it in the master plan, it's just a thought. I mean, something we would just piggyback on that. And Craig said he's got the money, so I just don't wanna jump out there and
He
say,
doesn't
do
have the
something
money
myself.
and it's going to the voters.
Yeah, he thinks he has the money.
He
anyhow.
thinks he has.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Huh?
Chair of the planning board, Mike Francisco.
Yeah. So the
Not
planning,
personally, but
yeah,
speaking about what the planning board's doing.
Yeah.
that means that an okay idea to, try to utilize that framework.
I absolutely think we ought to.
That's all.
Look at that, I got animated about trails, how about that? I like woods walks, even if the trees are smacking me in the face. Okay, let's see. How about the November 3rd, 2021 draft minutes?
I haven't had a chance to really read them, so, I don't know
Ah,
about anybody else.
I reviewed them, I didn't read them.
yeah.
I read them all.
The only,
Good
I
reviews
think-
on the land we bought.
Yeah.
The,
We
the,
did,
the
yeah.
only thing I saw is, right on the first page there, unfragmented block of land in Weare called Chipmunk Hills. Is it Chipmunk Hills or
Chipmunk
Chipmunk
Falls.
Falls? Yeah,
Falls.
okay.
No.
Is it Hills?
No, so it's designated in the, is it in the open space plan? It's somewhere as Chipmunk Hills.
Never
It's the-
heard of it that way.
More of a,
No, it's in a plan. It
Yeah, well,
literally
it may
is.
be wrong, because I've always heard it's falls. I've always, never heard of hills.
I think it's
Ever.
on the map.
Yeah, it was on the map.
On the map.
Really?
Yeah,
Never heard of it.
but that's what they put on the map. That block. It was in the
Oh, you
unfragmented
mean
block
as-
She
map.
took it from what you said from the map.
Yeah, it was on the unfragmented block map, and that was called Chipmunk Hills.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just the only thing I noticed.
Yeah.
I'm really gonna
That-
do some digging, because I've ridden that area and been in that area for years, and I've never heard it called hills.
No, that's okay, but I mean, it's
a
what was on the
construct,
map.
it's a one-off construct that was made for
Oh.
for
Yeah,
our
that's-
Okay.
what do we call that one? Natural resource inventory thing?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, natural
Yeah.
resource inventory report.
So the map was labeled, that block was labeled Chickmunk Hills. They might have just made that up, but I mean, that's what we're
I think
looking
they
at.
did,
I
yes.
think they made it up.
Yes. Well, you know, I took a read through these a few weeks back. And, I don't recall seeing anything that, jumped at me saying incorrect, needs adjustment.
Yeah, I know, we have to go back and look at it for where the dollar amounts are coming from.
Right, and that had it,
Yeah, it did.
had it in there correct.
Yep. I'll make a motion to accept it as written.
Second.
All right, we've got a Steve motion, Ray second. Any other thoughts on these? Anybody prefer to hold off until he or she can really dig into them?
Did most of it.
All right, all in favor of approving the draft minutes, say aye. Aye. Of course, these are November 3rd. Anybody opposed, abstaining?
I'm gonna abstain, because I really haven't read the last 2 or 3 pages at all. I've seen the first half of it, but not the second, and it's probably fine.
All right. So, for the record, we had Mike, Ray, Steve, Andy, and Mark in favor, and Jerry abstaining. I don't think we have them here, but the October minutes, I don't think we've approved either. But, if somebody wants to, and others are in favor, we can approve those also, or we can hold those and try to pick them up in the new year.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as they were printed for October 13th.
I'll second that.
All right, regarding the October 13th, 2021 minutes, we have Mark's motion, Steve's second on approving as written. Any other thoughts on those? Similarly, I do recall reading through them and feeling like they were a reasonable representation. Okay, there being no more comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Abstain.
I'll abstain. I don't believe I was here for that.
Gotcha, yeah. On those, we have Ray, Steve, Andy, Sherry, and Mark in favor, and Mike abstaining. All right, jumping down to,
I think you have one more set, Andy. You have your special meeting on 10/27. October 27, we have a meeting. Those are the ones you guys met together to talk about the request from the selectmen regarding the, I think, 2 or 3 items. You guys had a special meeting.
right, that was our,
October 27.
October 27.
With me, I guess.
They were
Yep.
tabled.
I had a look at those, I'm in the same place with them.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept October 27 minutes.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
We got a motion by Steve, a second by Ray. Any other thoughts, concerns? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? I believe we're all in favor there. I'm just gonna handle these in group. Any items of interest or concerns on the Department of Environmental Services mail.
I think the three of them are largely, the first three are largely requests for letters of, or second reminders for letters of deficiency. And then the fourth one is just the, you saw Tom Carr.
Yeah.
And that permit was granted for the wetlands.
How come it's two different realty groups that have the same?
I can tell you that it's bankruptcy, foreclosure. I can't remember which one. We've got several documents. I think they just notified everybody. 'Cause I think if you look at the letter,
It's the same people, Mr. Sargent
yeah,
and Ms.
well, I think there's two different, the first one has the Pine Island and, Pitbull has the same guy. I
Yeah,
don't know, you got a Charles Sargent Junior and a Charles Sargent Senior. And then you have another registered agent, so I think they have to notify everybody largely because of the, I think it's bankruptcy. I can't remember. I know we can't do anything with taxes yet.
All right. That's all that good there. No items needing action, or just plain no action items. And then we have the annual reminder from Spinnef for monitoring.
Yeah, it also tells you how to upload electronically.
yeah. Do we want to, get Meadowson to do that on the hourly, or is anyone gonna volunteer to do that? I still haven't gotten out to that other one we're supposed to do. Alex a lot, and then, we didn't look for anything else, is that it?
Tom usually covers the
Oh, yeah. Okay,
one near him.
yeah.
I would say, yeah. You know, I don't hear any volunteers. I'm not volunteering on that one. So, yeah, just let Jeremy know that it's something we would like to be covered for us in as efficient a manner as possible.
So that'd be out of conservation, under the hourly FSA. Appropriate up to like $1,000 out of conservation to go do that monitoring.
What's our hourly rate?
Six- What is it, 70-something now? Yeah, it was 60-something, yeah. That's a day, a little bit more than a day, between travel and writing, you know, uploading it. Kind of painful, or we can just blow it off for a year.
Oh, ideally we'd tag it on to something else that's happening, but might not. Yeah, take that motion for,
Up to $1,000, hourly FSA to have Meadowson go monitor it.
And they're just
Out of
gonna walk the
conservation.
boundaries.
Yeah, and do a report, and then any, you know, photograph any discrepancies, that kind of thing. We got rid of that salt shed
He's
thing.
done it before.
Huh?
He's done it before, didn't he? Because that's how you found the salt.
Salt shed.
Yeah.
And then that guy with the trailers, remember that were on the property? Yeah.
But when we taken that one.
No, all the boundaries are all done. Remember, we paid to have all the boundaries done? Yeah.
do we have a second on that motion?
I second it.
All right, Steve's motion, Sherry second.
Could you just CC me on that correspondence with Jeremy? I would like to, if I can, join him with that, just to
Great
see
idea.
what he's up to. I haven't been out to this land, so.
Okay. You want to just
I don't want to volunteer. I want to see what he's doing.
No, but I mean, do you wanna just email Jer instead of me emailing him?
Oh, sure.
To
Yeah,
set
yeah,
that
that's
up?
fine.
Just say there's
Yep.
up to $1,000 available in the hourly FSA, and we'd like, I'd like to get together with whoever you send and take a walk around it.
What property is that?
Collins Landing.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
leftover from the development of
Yep.
the condos. We end up having to survey it to figure out where it even was.
Yeah, that's, we don't own it, but we have, we have, we have no rights, only responsibilities on that one.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, and Spiniff is the backup for us, but as backup, they are in front of us saying, hey, gotta do that. It is,
Did that ever happen, the salt shed being moved and stuff?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it did.
Hopefully, we'll find out.
Find out, right? Yeah.
that was the impression.
Because that was borders Russell Drive, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, we got a motion duly seconded with the expectation that our secretary will make the communications on that one. All in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
All in favor? All right. Check there. We got some good things to do. We got some resources. Each one of us here is a resource. I think we've each been tapped pretty heavily in 2021. I need to put together an annual report to reflect that, but think what we've done.
Yeah.
You know, it's coordination with other entities, imperfect as we may be. It's purchasing future potential for this town. It's not for the Conservation Commission, it's for the town of Weare, for the future of the town of Weare, for everybody, selectmen, Conservation Commission, former this, future that. But 3 parcels, some with some pretty serious contention, some with hardly a comment. Kind of the way it goes. I think there's always things to work on in the future. But just in general, when we're looking at potential conservation projects, 98% of the time, we're reactive. We find out something, somebody contacts us and says, hey, sometimes we look at them 2 or 3 times before they work out, sometimes they never work out. Others pursue other uses as is a right and opportunity for all. But it is helpful, as we've tried to do, build big, and there can be lots of steps towards that. And we're always, looking for interested parties that we can work with. We got some resources. I think we've identified perhaps some other resources that we've never tapped from the private side of things, and that's potentially helpful to the future. I think we've probably identified points of concern among some in the private interests. And we don't go looking for contention, but hopefully we can play a good, strong game with or make a good, strong presentation with the deck we're handed. But thank you, everyone, for a hard year's work. We've taken some lumps. That's all right. I think one thing I had a very profound concluding feeling for me is sitting from the back corner, sort of watching things both that other boards are doing, or even what you guys are doing up here, and I need to set aside is we got some strength here, and we got something that's rounding into shape. Potentially starting from disparate interests, I think we've grown an appreciation for what each person here can offer to the puzzle. So that's cool. Steve and I have been on this thing for quite a while. We've seen, many different iterations. And there are times when we felt weak, and there's times we've felt strong, and I like what we got. And there are others that we'll find of in the future who have things to contribute, and there'll be times when, any one of us might say, well, I need to step aside. But thank you for being here. Thank you for a good year. And I will ask the administrator, when do we need town report or reports in?
It's usually by the end of January,
All right, so I'll have something for y'all to consider
in the January meeting.
and look at for a January meeting, and then we'll do something that I dropped the ball on last year, is make sure we've got an annual report into the town report like we are supposed to do. And it only makes sense that we do it. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn at 9:48.